And Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry and the FBI took to the podium in New Orleans just a few hours ago to provide an update on the investigation into the Bourbon Street terror attack. We're going to hear now from the state and federal officials in their own words as we replay that news conference.
From yesterday to today, over 1,000 law enforcement agents and officers, men and women, have been poring over countless amounts of data, of videos, of surveillances, interviews, tracking down every possible lead that came to us, whether it was the New Orleans Police Department, the Louisiana State Police, the FBI, or our other federal agencies. Also yesterday, I issued an emergency declaration. That declaration was meant to streamline resources and communications between state, local, and federal partners. And we're seeing the results of it. I also would like to remind everyone that what's going on in this city and this state is twofold. We've got an active criminal investigation going on, while we're also continuing to secure the city in preparation for 3 o'clock kickoff time for the Sugar Bowl. With that, I would also remind those who are in the city that as far as state resources are concerned, we have the Louisiana State Police, the Louisiana National Guard, which was part of that emergency declaration, which allowed us to put an entire MP company on the ground. Those become force multipliers, is what we call that in law enforcement and the military. That helps to add to the resources that we have. Wildlife and Fisheries, the Department of Corrections, DSF, DHS, our Veterans Affairs, our Probation and Parole, all state agencies. Any state agency who has post-certified officers are here in this city to help secure the city. And so with that, I would like to turn it over to Christopher Rea, who is the Deputy Assistant Director of the FBI's Counter Terrorism Division. Chris?
Thank you, Governor Landry. Good morning. I am FBI Deputy Assistant Director Christopher Rea. I'm from our Counterterrorism Division at headquarters. I'm also joined by Assistant Special Agent in Charge Alethea Duncan from our New Orleans office, who you heard from yesterday. I'm here to discuss not only the latest investigative information we have here in New Orleans, but I'll also let you know about other investigative activities outside of the state. I first, and most importantly, want to send our deepest condolences to the victims of this horrific attack and their loved ones. 14 innocent victims were killed in this senseless attack, and at least 35 are injured. We cannot ease the grief people in this community and across the nation are feeling at this time, but rest assured, we stand with you and in support of you. All the resources, and I'm going to go into that a little bit later, all the resources of the FBI are being focused on tracking down every piece of evidence, every lead, every interview, every potential lead we've got. While I won't be able to answer all your questions today, my goal is to be as forthcoming as possible with you on what we've uncovered so far. First and foremost, let me be very clear about this point. This was an act of terrorism. It was premeditated and an evil act. This was obviously a critical incident, and with that, lots of information and tips come pouring in from law enforcement, first responders, and the public. We have been aggressively running down these tips and information. As you all know, that takes time, and we will continue to do so until every lead has been followed through on. This investigation is only a little more than 24 hours old. So I ask you to keep in mind that as I go through some of the specifics later. But at this point, currently, and this is another fact I want to be clear on, we do not assess at this point that anyone else involved in this attack except for Shamsuddin Jabbar, the subject you've already been briefed on. A little bit about what the FBI is doing. So we are surging people and assets to the area from across the region and across the nation. Special agents in multiple field offices across the country have been deployed and are assisting with potential aspects of this investigation and following up on every lead. Additional teams of special agents, professional staff, and victim specialists continue to arrive to provide more investigative power and assistance to the victims and their families. We've also forward deployed a number of our critical incident response group assets, including members of our hostage rescue team, special agent bomb technicians, and crisis management coordinators. In addition, we have deployed more evidence response technicians to continue to process the various scenes that we have. So far, we have received just over 400 tips from the public, and that information is being followed up on both here in New Orleans and across the country. Some of the tips are here in New Orleans, and there are other tips in other states across the country that we're following up on. The FBI team and our law enforcement partners here are also reviewing hundreds of hours of surveillance and other video from both the French Quarter and other locations. As for a timeline, at this point, investigators believe Jabbar picked up the rented F-150 in Houston, Texas on December 30th. He then drove from Houston to New Orleans on the evening of the 31st, and he posted several videos to an online platform proclaiming his support for ISIS. There were 5 videos posted on Jabbar's Facebook account, which are time-stamped beginning at 1:29 a.m. and the last at 3:02 a.m. In the first video, Jabbar explains he originally planned to harm his family and friends, but was concerned the news headlines would not focus on the, quote, war between the believers and the disbelievers, end quote. Additionally, he stated he had joined ISIS before this summer. He also provided a will and testament. FBI and ATF. FBI, we have a couple different scenes at the location. We have released the scene at Bourbon Street. That scene has been released. We also have a scene off of Mandeville address where we're currently searching that scene right now. FBI and ATF agents have secured that house, and that location is being searched for potential evidence. On New Year's morning, Jabbar opened fire after ramming through a blocked-off area of Bourbon Street, used his truck as a weapon to run over the victims. Teams of specially trained victim specialists, again, as I said, are on the ground here in New Orleans, assisting survivors of the attacked and loved ones of the deceased. We do not believe the public is in any danger around any of these locations. 3 phones linked to Jabbar have been recovered, and digital media exploitation is a priority to see what is on the devices and determine if there are any other potential leads. Additionally, we have recovered 2 laptops and are currently reviewing them for any potential leads. Those laptops were recovered at the Mandeville address. Evidence technicians will also be going over the F-150 truck Jabbar was driving. As you know, we recovered an ISIS flag from the back of the vehicle. Jabbar declared his support for the terrorist group on social media, as I stated before, as he made his way to New Orleans. FBI bomb technicians also recovered 2 IEDs in coolers, one from the cross-section of Bourbon and Orleans Street, and the second at an intersection approximately 2 blocks away. There were multiple reports of other devices. Those reports turned out to be misinformation or not actual functioning devices. Those are the only 2 devices that we've been able to recover that were functional. Both devices were rendered safe on scene. We did obtain surveillance footage showing Jabbar placing the devices where they were found. Two other, as I said before, 2 other items of interest were determined not to be IEDs. A little bit about Jabbar. Jabbar himself was born in the United States and is a U.S. military veteran. We are looking in everything in his life. While we have interviewed many people who know Jabbar, we still need to talk to others. Whether you know Jabbar personally, worked with him, served in the military, or saw him in New Orleans or Texas, we need to talk to you. You may not think you have relevant information, but what you know could tie in to one of our investigative leads. Specifically, we want to talk to anyone who was in the French Quarter on New Year's Eve or early on New Year's Day. That includes people spotted near one of the 2 IEDs on Bourbon Street. The IED was inside a cooler, and many people stopped and looked at the cooler and then continued on their way. Let's be clear, again, we do not believe at this point these people are involved in this incident in any way. We want to speak to them as witnesses and want to know what they saw and when. I went down to the crime scene last night. It is very hard to put into words what it looked like and how difficult it was to see. Anyone with information can call us at 1-800-CALL-FBI or send digital tips to fbi.gov/Bourbon Street attack. Early this morning, evidence response teams finished their work at the crime scene. Bourbon Street has been turned over to the city of New Orleans. As you know, there's also an FBI investigation in Las Vegas. We are following up on all potential leads and not ruling everything out. However, at this point, there is no definitive link between the attack here in New Orleans and the one in Las Vegas. And again, as I close, I'll preface everything with what I started with in the beginning, which was this is very early in an investigation like this. Again, our thoughts and prayers are with the victims of this tragedy and everyone impacted across the country. They remain at the heart of our investigation. I also, although I've only been on the ground here a short time, I also want to express a sincere appreciation for our partners here, which include the U.S. Attorney's Office, HSI, ATF, the New Orleans PD, the Louisiana State Police, the Governor's Office, and countless others.
We've been listening to a briefing from state and federal officials with the latest today on the investigation into the deadly New Orleans terror attack. We'll bring you more from that news conference coming up in our second half hour of News 15 First at 4. Federal, state, and local officials took to the podium in New Orleans just a few hours ago to provide an update on the investigation into the Bourbon Street terror attack. A little earlier, we brought you the first portion of that briefing. Now let's listen in on that second half of what authorities had to say about today's developments in the case.
Hey, good afternoon. As stated, my name is Joshua Jackson. I am the special agent in charge for the ATF New Orleans Field Division. And ATF's primary mission is preventing, reducing, and solving violent crime throughout the United States and abroad. Solving part is the focus of this investigation. ATF resources that have been brought to bear to the city and to focus with our federal, state, and local partners have been our national response team. We spoke about the scene that's still being processed now. The National Response Team of ATF is a team of certified fire investigators, certified explosive specialists fire engineers, electrical engineers. These folks will give us additional investigative leads to help the investigative team identify what happened at the location in Mandeville and identify how that fire started and move the investigation forward from there. Additional resources that ATF has brought to bear into the city. There's our ATF Special Response Team. This is a tactical team capable of handling any sort of enforcement operation. This team is deployed, on set, and ready for the Sugar Bowl today. This team is also made available to the Louisiana State Police and also New Orleans Police Department to assist with any efforts that they may have during this period. Additional resources, as the governor alluded to, he executed executive powers and had an emergency declared to where ATF was able to tap in to Emergency Support Function 13 resources. This allowed us to bring additional explosive detection canines so that we can safely sweep the city and safely sweep the Super Bowl in preparation for the game today. These resources will still be in the city as we lead up to the Super Bowl and through Mardi Gras. These type of ATF resources will be here. The last resources ATF has brought to bear, and probably the most important one, is our victim witness coordinators. These folks come in and they provide resources to the victims and the family members that have suffered greatly during this tragedy. The entire city hurts, but the victims and the family members are in need of resources and care long after this investigation wraps up. This time next year to be hard for the families and friends who suffered during this event. So our victim witness coordinators are working with the FBI, the City of New Orleans coordinators to provide resources to these folks out here. And as we move forward, ATF will be committed. We will work with the investigative team moving this investigation forward, but also we'll be here to make sure the city is safe and prepared as we move into the Super Bowl. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our mayor of this great city, New Orleans. Madam Mayor.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Well, good morning once again. And I just want to just echo my thank yous to the unified command of our law enforcement partners and at every single level, federal, state, and governor. Governor, thank you for your partnership. Yeah, thank you. I also want to thank the residents and the visitors of the city of New Orleans for your patience, for your support, and most of all, your prayers. Our hearts and prayers continue to go out to the victims' families, and the city of New Orleans, we're resilient. And as I stated on yesterday, my focus in terms of a priority has been on our victims. As you heard, that yes, the FBI was able to clear Bourbon Street. And what that meant also for me in this city was that we were able to remove our victims, identify them, and notify their families. Real reverence. They mattered, the families matter, and matter to the city of New Orleans. In addition to that, I want to just thank again our federal partners in Washington, listening to my plea personally for the additional resources to allow for the scene to be cleared, and again, attending to our victims. I walked by each one, and I did the sign of cross in my own way, because reverence, again, is important. So while we have been able to have Bourbon Street returned back to the city of New Orleans, and the due diligence has been done, that then allowed me to give the go-ahead to begin the cleaning of Bourbon Street. That started happening in the morning about 2 a.m. It was completed before 8 a.m. this morning. But that has really set the tone, I would say, and with the confidence that I have in the law enforcement partners, all of the resources that have been activated, how we have made sure that safety continues to be our top priority, how our assets have been deployed strategically, again, for the safety and the protection of our visitors and our residents in the city. And because of that, the confidence is there to reopen Bourbon Street to the public prior to game time today. The first order will be to allow for vendors to come in and service the businesses. That's important in order for us to stand up activation, as you know, Governor. And so with that, I want to reassure the public that the city of New Orleans is not only ready for game day today, but we're ready to continue to host large-scale events in our city because we are built to host at every single turn. I want to again thank all of those who responded to the FBI's call for information and tips. As you heard, that has been useful. Continue to do that. The investigation is still active and absolutely under the FBI's leadership. We will continue to operate and cooperate as we always have. So I want to also thank all of our partners for the added resources for victim and crisis management. We know that that's again important. Working with our partner, the Greater New Orleans Foundation, we have set up a fund for our victims' families for not only today but into the future. As you heard, this is going to be a long process for our people. So with that, the city of New Orleans, and with all of my confidence, we are ready. And we could not get here again without the unified presence, support, and cooperation. We are stronger together. And I want to say again, thank you so much. Thank you, Governor. So once again, the Governor would like me to reiterate that Bourbon Street will be prepared for full activation before game time today. We know 3 p.m., so we're working towards 2:30 p.m. But prior to game time, the kickoff, Bourbon Street will be restored. So we're hard at work now. Our teams are now, and of course, working with our business community to serve our public and serve our residents and our visitors alike.
Okay. In closing, I want to rest people assured that right now in the city of New Orleans, there is an unprecedented amount of law enforcement resources that are being utilized to close out and to hunt down and to finalize this investigation. I want to thank the FBI and all of our federal partners for the amount of resources that they have poured into the city. This type of event can happen in any city. And that's the tragedy of it. And I think it's important for people to understand that to protect our citizens in America from evil, you have to crush it. You can't go out there and placate it. You can't go out there and say, oh, I'm going to put this in place and that in place and hope that evil doesn't show up on your doorstep, because it will. You have to crush it. And that's what we're going to do here. We're going to put it all behind us. We're going to continue to keep the victims, those that are in the hospital, either fighting for their lives or trying to recover, in our thoughts and in our prayers. But you know, this morning, and I don't want to single out just one news source, but I just happened to turn on Fox and Friends, and there was a young man who was interviewed who was actually on Bourbon Street during this horrific act of terrorism. And they closed out by asking him, what now? And I think he summed it up. He said, look, we can't live in fear, because fear will paralyze us. He said, we come down to the city to enjoy ourselves and to entertain ourselves and to be with our friends and with our families, because that's who we are. Louisiana invented hospitality. The people of this city care for each other. And believe you me, we care about each one of the lives that were lost in the city in that. We will never forget them. But it would be a tragedy if we let their losses be snuffed out because of fear. This city will be back. We will be open to family and friends and loved ones who want some time to relax from the pressures of life. And so today, we're going to have us a sugar bowl. We're going to enjoy ourselves. We're going to keep those, again, who have lost loved ones in mind. And we're going to get on to the business of this city and this great country.
And we've been listening to today's briefing by state and federal authorities about the New Orleans terror attack investigation. Coming up next hour on News 15 Live at 5, we'll talk exclusively one-on-one with Lafayette's police chief about safety and security at big events here in the Hub City in the wake of what happened in New Orleans.